Welcome back to ICC and our recap of round 4 of the Olympiad. Today was full of action and even more unexpected blunders. In the open section, top seed Team USA found its nemesis in the face of Ukraine, losing the match 1.5 to 2.5. In another major upset of the day, last Olympiad champions Team Uzbekistan fell to Vietnam 3-1 for their first defeat in 23 Olympiad matches. On other top boards, India won convincingly versus Serbia, scoring 3.5-1/2, and China also got the better of the Armenian team, scoring 2.5, 1.5. Some individual stories of the round include Italian Lorenzo Lodici continuing his streak, this time with a win over former World Championship challenger Peter Leko, just the day after he defeated Super GM Anish Giri. Magnus Carlsen also won his game as he led Team Norway to a 3-1 win versus Team Slovakia. Let's go see some game highlights. In the first game from the open section we're going to take a look, we will have a sneak peek into the USA versus Ukraine match. Here as white, we have Ukrainian legend Vasyl Ivanchuk, who is taking on Wesley, the American star. The last move of the game has been Rook e2, the idea simply being to play Rook e3 and capture the knight. However, Black has problems of his own. For example, here, his king on h6 is surprisingly rather vulnerable, and it is very easy to create a mating threat against it. The game saw the continuation Rook b7, threatening to take the pawn on f7, so that in case of Rook e3, Rook takes f7, the knight is protected, and Rook h8 will follow on the next move with mate. That's why Wesley decided to try another trick. He went for the move Rook e5, taking advantage of the fact that the knight is pinned and it cannot capture the rook. The game continued with Rook takes f7, and we still have the same threat on the board, Rook h8 with mate. The trick Wesley was counting on was playing g5, freeing up a square for his king, and in case of an exchange, things would be more than fine, with Black managing to survive with a draw. After the king moves, let's say Rook f5 will follow, and if the rooks are swapped off the board, there would be no way for white to win the game. Well, if only it was so simple. After g5, Vasyl found another resource, another way to continue his attack. He played the move h5, taking the g6 square away from the king. Here, Black had an only choice, as he had to escape from the Rook h8 threat. So Wesley played the move king takes h5. Here, Vasyl finished the game in style, playing the move Rook f6, taking both g6 and h6 from the Black king. And now Rook h8 is simply unstoppable. There isn't a move that Black can play to improve his position. There isn't even a check. So that's why here Wesley simply resigned. An interesting fact about this game is that 15 years ago, actually Vasyl Ivanchuk announced his retirement after losing to Wesley in a World Cup match. But here we are in 2024, and this time Vasyl is winning at the Olympiad versus the American star. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, let's jump on to the next game. In the next stop of our recap, we are going to take a look at the Vietnam versus Uzbekistan match. On the board, we have Le Tuan Minh as white, a famous titled Tuesday specialist, taking on young star Javohir Singh Daro from Uzbekistan. So the last move from the game was bishop d6, where Sindarov responded with the move knight to e8. Knight to e8 seems rather logical, as black wants to get rid of the strong bishop on d6. There are some important details though. Even if white takes on e7, this doesn't solve black's problems. The game went on with bishop e7, as king to e7 would run into rook a3, bishop d7, knight d5, forcing the black king to the 8th rank, and rook a7. And here in this position, it would be white who is having all the fun. All those pieces are extremely passive, and in the same time, all the white ones are placed superbly, with a rook on a7, knight on d5, and another knight on d4. I mean, black cannot even take the pawn on c4, as that would run into rook d7, king d7, and knight b6, winning a piece, recapturing the rook on the next move as well. So for this reason, Sindarov preferred the move bishop e7, keeping the a3 square under control, so that rook a3 and rook takes a7 is not possible. Bishop e7, though, opened white's way for other attacks. So the game continued with bishop d5 check. Black has two main options here: play king f8 or play king g7. In the case of king f8, he would be in big trouble after white's continuation knight e6, knight f7 on knight g8, doesn't really matter, and knight c5, opening up a discovered check and picking up a free bishop on a4. The game saw the move king g7. However, here Sindarov was in for a nasty surprise as well. After knight f5, he simply resigned. The problem here is that black simply cannot take the knight. After g takes f5, white would have a forced checkmate, playing rook g3, king h6, knight f5, king h5, and bishop f7, sealing the deal with checkmate. Now, I don't know about you, but I found this position really fascinating, as the coordination between the white pieces is simply incredible. It is not something you see every day. So I really thought it would be worthy to include in our recap. And with that thought, let's take a look at what else we had in mind. In the final game of the open section I want to highlight, we're going to take a look at the match Turkey versus Latvia. As white, we have the youngest ever to cross 2600, 13-year-old Yagiz Erdogmus, and as black, we have the Latvian GM Nikita Meshkov. Here, the young prodigy played a very unexpected move. He went for the sacrifice rook to e6. The idea is that in case of f takes e6, white can actually win the queen after playing knight to e7 check, hitting both the king and the queen. In case of bishop e7, the game would see queen takes g6, king f8, queen takes e6, and it is only a matter of time before white announces checkmate. On the next move, he's gonna go for rook e5, rook f5, simply winning the game. That's why, for this reason, black couldn't afford to take on e6 with the pawn. He had to come up with something else. He chose the lesser evil and played the move queen takes to e6. After rook takes to e6, f takes e6, black is not even down material. But the problem he has is that the king is very vulnerable. So after knight d6, rook takes d6, the queen found its way to the black camp with a tempo. The game continued with king f8, queen f6, making sure the king is back to g8. And now the move f5, including a final resource in the attack. After the queen and the pawn coordinate, there wouldn't be a way for black to avoid losing checkmate or losing a significant amount of material. The game continued with h takes g3, queen g6 check, queen f8, and after f takes e6, black resigned. The reason is that there is simply no way to protect f7. And in case of rook takes e6, queen e6, g takes h2, king h1 stops the pawn, and white is only a queen up, more than enough to win the game. Well, what a beautiful game that was for the young prodigy. It's just a fascinating attack. But with that thought, let's end it here for the open section and check out how the ladies did in today's round. In the women's section, top-seeded Team India extended their winning streak by cruising to a 3.5-half victory versus France. On board 3, China had another great day as they had a clean sweep versus England, scoring 4 out of 4 wins. It is always the upsets where the real drama of the round is. Ukraine was held surprisingly to a draw by lower-seeded Team Turkey in a dramatic match. Mongolia pulled off an upset 2.5-1.5 win versus Spain, and underdogs Uzbekistan shined again as they beat Bulgaria 2.5-1.5. Let's break down how it all happened. The first game on our radar is from the China versus England match. As white, we have international master and Olympiad veteran Harriet, while as black we have woman grandmaster and Olympiad debutant Shiqun. One look at the board is enough to tell that white is already not doing so well. She is down a full exchange, her pieces are uncoordinated, and her king is under attack as well. It is really the last move, king to g1, that accelerated white's demise though. Black had an important idea the white player had missed. In her next move, Ni played the move bishop c8, attacking the queen. After queen h5, bishop g4 trapped the queen, forcing white to give it up for free. White decided she had seen enough for the day and simply resigned. A beautiful end for Shiqun's game and a fantastic contribution to China's 4-0 victory. A round of applause for the Chinese women, and let's go check out the next game in our recap. Here we have a game from the Turkey versus Ukraine match. As white, we have Turkey's Aydin Gülenay as she tries to level the score for her team against Evgenia Dolohanova. Now, on the board we have opposite-colored bishop endgame, which is usually a premise for a draw. However, our player with white really needs to win in order to secure the 2-2 result. For this reason, she kept on playing, counting on some practical chances versus the black king. This position is actually rather tricky. Black needed to find the continuation of rook e1 check, king h2, and queen e6 to stay in the game. Instead, what happened was that Evgenia played the move king to g8, trying to run to safety. The problem with this is that it allows white to regroup her forces, playing the move rook to c1, threatening to go rook f1, and playing the move f4. The game continued with bishop a4, rook f1, bishop c2, and f4, blowing the king's side wide open. The problem for black is that in case of g takes f4, rook takes f4, the white rook is joining the party, and the combination of a queen, rook, and a bishop against the black king is going to be deadly. That's why Evgenia tried to minimize the damage and she played the move g4, sacrificing a pawn, hoping to keep the king side closed. Gulenay followed up with queen takes g4, king h7, queen h4, king g8, and the move f5, kicking the black rook away from the f6 pawn defense. After rook e8, Gulenay went for a rook lift, rook f3, aiming to include the rook via g3 into the attack of the black king. After king f8, bishop c5, black resigned in view of king g8, rook g3, where black would be forced to give up her queen. Or the other continuation that was possible wasn't desired either, as after rook e7, queen h8, queen g8, queen f6 with queen on the spot. What a fantastic comeback for Aydin Gulenay and Team Turkey! Congratulations to her, and let's check out the final game from the women's section for our recap. And last but not least, we have a game from the Spain versus Mongolia match. Here is white. Spanish international master Sabrina Vega is facing another international master, none other than Davaademberel from Mongolia. Let's take a look. In this position, we can see easily that white has all the control over the board. The queen on e5 is magnificent, the rook on e7 is super active, and the pawn on d6 simply suffocates black's forces. But one question remains though. How do we break through as white? Everything is defended. Well, Sabrina found a genius way to solve this as she played the move king to g3. The idea is to bring the white king all the way to h6 and threaten checkmate on g7. The game went on with rook a8, queen f6, forcing the rook back into passiveness, rook f8, king f4, continuing the king march, king h7, king g5, queen a8. Notice how the entire time the white king is completely safe despite there being both queens and rooks on the board. Black cannot even dream of giving a check or a capture or even creating any threat whatsoever. So after queen a8, the game ended with rook f7, rook takes f7, queen takes f7, king h8, and king h6. In this position, black resigned, as the only way to prevent checkmate in one is to play queen g8. But after, black would be again in trouble after queen f6 check, queen g7, and queen takes g7 mate. What a beautiful win for Sabrina and a fantastic display of technique. That was all for today's recap. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next videos here on ICC.